How's it going, YouTube? Coming to today with another video, and today, guys, the video is going to be the where to hand trap, but in a tier list, and I'm going to tell you which hand traps are the best ones used right now, which ones are the absolute worst, and then we're going to go alongside the ones that could see some potential, and some that I just wouldn't go after this format. I really do hope that you enjoy this video. I've been spending countless hours getting ready for Niagara Falls. I am very excited. I have a lot of ideas, and I really think that this could be the one. I have plenty of regional top 8s, and I am just wanting my time to finally get that YCS top. Going to day 2 already. It feels great when you make it, but you gotta play out. I ended up getting my run ended by Plant when I opened Droplet Kelbeck, and the only matchup that lost to was exactly Plant. And of course, I ran into Plant. So, very unfortunate, but we are ready to go for Niagara. Let's hop right on into our hand trap tier list. So, Epsilon, I would put this in don't. It can counter Impulse in like a couple things, I guess, but like, it's still not the time for this one, at least. I would say that if you're going to play anything like of the side frames right now, I would probably even say the Delta in the side right now is kind of crazy because of the fact that cards like Typhoon and Ogre are so important right now, since your opponent could have Deception. But not only that, your opponent being on like Throne or Nightmare Pain, or if they commit something to their EMZ and they are going to try and use their Runic Fountain, and then you just pop it with Delta, right? So I think that this is going to be really valuable. And like a side note too is like you should probably be siding like Book of Moon. I like Book of Moon a lot right now. It can shut off a lot of different things. But one of my favorite things to do is against Runic, you just Book of Moon their Hugin and their EMZ, and they actually just lose. Like, there's nothing that deck can do. That deck will frantically freak out if you Book of Moon a Hugin and the EMZ. It's kind of wild. If you haven't tried it yet, try it. It's very, very powerful. But Imperium, I would say this is also just up in A. Probably even S, but it takes a lot for something to be S right now, right? I think that Imperium is a great card. I think that it's fantastic. It doesn't play into talent. It does everything that you want it to do. But, like, if we're talking about S tier, it's just the Mulcharmies, really, right now. The Mulcharmies are crazy. And a lot of people right now are saying, well, Perulia is just a don't because we have Fualo, so why the hell would you ever want to have Perulia? People are passing turn or making the worst boards ever right now because of Perulia in the first place. And Perulia is always an upstart goblin. I'm always just playing both of these. I'm going to main deck Fualos and side deck Perulia. If I'm going second, I am drawing cards. And that is something where if Maxi was at 3 right now, and we had 3 Fualos, you're running 6 cards in your main deck that say you draw cards. And I don't really feel like this changes much. You're still siding Perulia. Perulia is still crazy, but you're maining Fualos and siding Perulia. And even if you're not siding 3 Perulia, you're siding 1 because you're siding remaining Crossout. So you're always going to at least be playing 4 Mulcharmies right now because the cards are broken. It just is what it is, right? Right now, I really do think that we are just definitely in a hand trap format, so you're probably not going to see a whole lot of low-tiered hand traps, at least not a lot of the relevant ones, right? Because I really do think that some of these are very powerful at the moment. So one thing that I think is really important too is going to be Ash Blossom. I think that it's still S tier, it still hits literally everything, and it's something that can also counter the Mulcharmies. You have to be on Ash Blossom if you're going to be playing any sort of hand traps. I think that the only time that we didn't see Ash, my hand traps were like Meister and Belt, because it was just the better counterpart to playing like an Ash. And the only time we didn't see Impermanent format was like Virtual World format. So very rarely will these cards ever leave the format, and they're both very strong. I think that you could move Imperm to S tier, and Imperm is just crazy, but you have to understand too that there can only be so many things in like S tier, right? Because it's S tier, it's crazy. But I think that Ash is always crazy. I think the Mulcharmies are just broken, out of this universe broken. They're just crazy. Another card, Shifter, is just insane. Like, Shifter is the best card in the game. I don't care what anyone says. This card is the game right now. Like, if you don't have the best deck, you're playing Shifter. And Shifter, like, S tier is Shifter tier, right? It's just crazy. But that's my opinion, at least for, like, the S tier, where I think that things really can be. I think a lot of things are A tier, but most of like the really crazy hand traps being Shifter, the Mulcharmies, and like Ash are always, to me at least, going to be S tier because they're just really broken. They're very good into like every matchup for the most part. I know Shifter varies, but like even these are really good in multiple matchups, so it just is what it is. I think that another one that's really underrated right now is Typhoon. I would say like B tier. I have it in a lot of my side deck. I think Typhoon's crazy. If your opponent controls 2 Spell or Trap and you control none, you can use it from your hand and pop a face of Spell or Trap your opponent controls. So you can hit the Deception when they activate the Sacred, and they have to try to send one from hand if they can. You can also hit things like Nightmare Pain. You can hit Birth if they have Rate Saw. There's a lot of different things that you can do with this card that I think are very strong. So definitely consider this card. I think it's very good. DD Crow, I'd say like C tier. It's like okay. I'd probably put the Bestials in like B tier, maybe even like A tier. But like people are cutting back on the Fiendsmith package right now. They're playing like one of the Engraver, at least for like some of the more popular builds that I've been seeing. So I do think that like the Bestials are really crazy, but like when people are moving away from playing a lot of the Fiendsmith cards and they're focusing more on like the fire part of it, it's really good if you're playing into like the Yubel deck, but that's also only if they don't have Phantom right away, and it's also only if your opponent doesn't have like a super crazy board and you don't have like 2 hand traps, right? Because like Bestial and is usually really good, but by itself is kind of like okay. But I do think that this card is really broken. In general, like the Bestial cards, I think Crow is just objectively worse right now. It can be very good for hitting out like Sacred from your opponent's graveyard, but just only for that is like okay. Nibiru is just always an A tier for me because even when people say it's not a Nibiru format, that just means that it is a Nibiru format because that means that the idea is that no one's playing it, so then you play it and people just walk into it. I think Nibiru is always crazy, especially right now. It just punishes people really hard. Don't play Gamma while it's at 1. It's basically banned. Lancia, so I'm gonna put this in B tier specifically just because this card absolutely deletes Ritual Beast. It deletes Ritual Beast and it makes Runic's life living hell, right? It just is really rough for them to play. So I think that this is a really good, like very, very good. It has like minor uses against things like Yubel because of like Squirmer and Yama. So it's like okay, but it's not like that crazy, but it's really good against Runic and it's really good against Ritual Beast. They actually pass turn. It's like dropping Shifter on a tier player. It's the same thing. So Lancia is pretty cool. I like Lancia a lot. I would say Mourner is like C. It's okay. Like there's just other cards I'd rather play instead. Because even Valor I'd put up next to Imperm, right? Like Valor and Imperm are effectively the same thing to me, but like Imperm obviously has a lot of different applications, and Valor isn't good under things like Shifter, but I do think that target negation right now is still very strong. Another card I think that is very strong right now is Ogre. I think Ogre is fantastic. It's a card that can hit so many things. Again, the same things that Typhoon can hit, but even more. And it's something that can just come up very often for you, especially just being able to take bodies off of the board, which is more and more important every day. And then also being able to hit things like the Sangan Summoning if your opponent goes through that, or whichever you see come to the board is going to be really important to go ahead and stop those cards. The other thing here too is gonna be Dogwood. So I mean, it is what it is. The card is broken though. I've seen it resolve multiple times, and when it resolves and your opponent has to try to combo through under a Dogwood, it is really painful because you give your opponent like 43,000 life, right? If you're gonna like full combo through like whatever crazy board you want to make, your opponent can just draw a card and pass. You can't kill them, so then you pass back. I now have 7 cards that I can break your board with, right? Like, that is insane. So, if anything, Dogwood just gives you another turn, right? And I think that's really important. Don't tier, it's going to be a couple of these here. Cherries, Meister. Meister will see his day again, I'm sure. I really love the secret rare of Meister. Meister looks insane. But Reaper, it's just not that good. It's never been that good. It's always been cope. It's like no material. It's just cope. Cope. Dominus Impulse is probably an S tier. Shout outs to my friend who said that this card was raw bannable. I probably agree, but I don't think this card is like that insane. Like Shifter exists, so like Shifter could be banned before Impulse. But like it is kind of crazy to have Solemn Warning from the hand. So I mean, Caesar is something that we put on our board right now because Caesar is crazy, but what if you just had Caesar from hand? But what if I also told you you cannot use Droll, Fualos, unless you like shotgun it, right? You also can't use Nibiru, so the second that you show your opponent Impulse, they're like, welp, like, I can't get nibbed, like, I'm just gonna play out my combo. So, I mean, that's a little unfortunate. Bell, be somewhere like middle of B. I think Bell's okay. It's not that bad, but it's like okay. As far as Phantasme, I would say it's like okay. Like you could, but like we have these cards now, and like this is just worse. These cards, right? You could like play them in tandem, or if you don't have Fualos and you just have Perulia and Phantasme, I think that's a good combination. But like you should just be on these if you can be. Dominus Purge. I don't like this card. I'm gonna put it at like B tier. It's like okay. It's another Ash but they need to control a card, and that sucks because a lot of things you're gonna Ash is just gonna be like cards that they're just gonna rip right away, right? Like Engraver or what have you. Then the other thing too is that like it locks you out of some really, really rough attributes that I'm not a fan of being locked out of. So I'm not a huge fan of Purge. I really like Impulse after playing it. That card's crazy, but Purge is like, it's okay. Droll's crazy. I also would just love to play Droll right now. Droll's insane. It's able to shut down way too many things at the moment. But this is where I'm kind of at right now. You might be really surprised with like the Bishop placement, but I think Bishops are like worse right now. I'm still going to be playing them 100%. They're going to be in my main deck. But I just think that like there's so many other things right now where if I'm prioritizing space in my main deck, and you'll kind of see this around everywhere, like Bishops moved from the main deck to the side deck because the Fiendsmith packages are getting smaller. And they're still there, but like these cards are taking precedence over this. So we'll see moving forward, but I hope this helped you. And if it did, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you all in the next video. I appreciate y'all. Thank you.